Tuesday. Live stream. YouTube. Yeah. All right, folks. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll get a nice little fade out on that. That music is courtesy of Moog Lee, who many of you know of. That was one of his earliest tracks that blew my mind. He made it all on like Reason 6 at the time. And yeah, if you go over to Moog Lee's YouTube channel and look for the song Afritek, A-F-R-I-T-E-K, you will be able to find that track. It is one of my favorite songs of his. And, you know, it's great because you can get a lot of motivation and a lot of inspiration from people who are not famous. You know, Moog Lee is not some famous musician. And that was one of the songs that was a huge inspiration to me because my friend made it, you know, and when you realize like, wow, like, you know, this is somebody that's like right next to me that's doing this stuff. I can learn a lot from that. So I really, really enjoy that song. And yeah, I'd encourage you to check it out. So hello, everybody. I see some common faces here. DDA, I'm going to get to your question today that you asked last week that I didn't even get to. So we'll be able to answer that. I'm really excited because I really enjoyed that question. Ron Snyders is here. Jared, I see Phone Account, who I actually recognize because you mentioned its video spell. Ronnie, Okan, Monster Montage, and Jay. Good to see everybody in here. So what we're going to do is we are going to answer some questions at a fairly brisk pace today. I'm kind of limited for time, but I'll pretty much have enough time to answer everything, I think, adequately. However, I don't necessarily have all the knowledge to answer everything adequately. So this will be another stream where I will have to direct you to other resources as well. But let's begin. I believe some of the earlier questions are going to be some of the easier ones. So let's start off with the first questions that were asked. It's going to be first come, first serve for these. So let's see here. Make sure everything is loaded up properly. And yeah, I've got today's question. So let's switch over here and start answering some of these. Our first one is from Kevin Kelly, Monster Montage, aka Phone Account, aka, oh wait, no, that's Video Spell. Sorry, Monster Montage is somebody different. So we still got the two names in there though, two aliases. And Kevin was asking, if you were planning a tour, how would you go about finding out-of-state venues to perform at? Do you or any of your beautiful and talented patrons know of an online resource for that sort of thing? So, Kevin, if it were me, okay? If it was me and I decided, hey, I want to start playing out of state, what I would do is I would first look at what kind of events do I want to play? Do I want to play like a Rib Fest? Do I want to play like a 4th of July festival? Do I want to be playing bars? Do I want to be playing, you know, like Halloween events? You know, like what kind of event am I looking for? And then I would do lots of Googling and I would find those events and I would contact the organizers at least a year ahead of time. In my experience, most of those well-organized things, you have to get in very, very early. So that's what I personally would do, but I've never actually engaged in this. So the other thing I would do is go talk to somebody who has done this. My friend Carrie Devine has organized way more actual gigs than I ever will. And you've seen him on my videos on, Mixolydian Mode, and you saw him in my video on the Mario Cadence. Well, he like puts together bands and gigs and tours, and that's a skill, and that means he knows how to do that. So I would just ask him. I would literally say, hey, when, you know, who's the person you reach out to? Do you reach out to the club owner? Do you have a press kit? You know, and he would really educate me on all those kind of things. So hopefully you have somebody that has at least touched that before. And if you don't, then another option that is very easy is find out who has performed at an event that you want to perform at. For example, you want to perform at the big art fest in California, you know, or some like, I know the kind of stuff you're into, Monster Montage, Kelly. So I'm thinking think of like some Halloween concert, right? In, Asheville, North Carolina, some awesome Halloween party, and you want to perform at it. Well, find out who performed there last year and just get a hold of them on social media and ask them, hey, you know, this is who I am. I'm curious about trying to get a gig there. How did you do it? Would you be able to help me out? You know, if you're nice and if you're cordial, and if you're asking for help, a lot of people are willing to give help. So, the worst case scenario, they say, no, I'm not going to help you. That's not that bad. A rejection isn't that bad. So that is how I would answer that question for you, Monster Montage, and I hope that helps. I don't know of an online resource of that sort of thing, but maybe some of the other Patreon members can add to that. So, my next question is not a question. It's from Paul, and he says, the Japanese don't say I love you, they say, and I think that's beautiful. And of course I couldn't resist but go to Google Translate, and of course that means mute the guitarist. So of course, you know, Paul, you do know I'm a guitarist, right? All right, we are all aware of that fact that I can't play anything other than the guitar. Either way, nice contribution. I appreciate it. I'll counter with my own contribution for you, Okan, though. Oh, and then great here, Monster Montage is in the chat. So, yeah, so, and Okan is, and I was going to mention you, Okan, for this exact answer. He's saying that if you ever get Somewhat Serious Band, I have possible Summerfest connections. That's what it's all about, is like people that are actually doing this. And Okan, aka Paul, does lots of gigging. So, you know, consult with those people. I am not a person who gigs a lot, especially for business. The only shows I do are like for fun or for charity or something like that, or for, you know, recitals, rock recitals for kids and stuff like that, and, you know, filling in for people. But I haven't organized a band thing since like high school, and maybe one day I will, but I don't have any intention of doing that in the distant future or in the near future. So consult with somebody that does, because it's a skill set and it's a certain, you know, there's tricks to that trade that I'm not very aware of. So, all right, we're going to move on to this question from Peter Wolf. Peter Wolf is asking a great question about a great song. He's saying, this is a really simple question, and I was working through the chords of Comfortably Numb, all easy to understand. B minor, D major, C major, except I feel comfortably numb, A, C, G, D. Series of 1, 5. What's the deal with the A? Okay, let's talk a little bit about Comfortably Numb. It's wonderful, a wonderful chord progression, all right? If you listen to the verse progression from Comfortably Numb, all right, here's what we've got. We've got this chord progression, essentially. The only thing that I didn't notate in here is the walking F sharp on the bass. But you've got B minor, and then A, and then G, and then the bass walks down F sharp to E minor, and then back to B minor, and that's hello, is there anybody in there, out there, just not if you can hear me. Is there anyone home? So this is bread and butter B minor. And if we wrote it with the Roman numerals of B minor, we'd see this is all diatonic. Nothing breaks the rules. Here was our 1 chord. Here's our 7 chord. Here's our 6 chord. Here's our 4 chord. This is B minor. But I want to be thinking of this in D major, okay? Because D, you know, B minor is relative to D major. They contain the same chords, they contain the same notes and all that stuff. So when I write this, I'm actually going to write it like this, which I sometimes do, I sometimes don't do. But in this case, I'm going to compare these to the chords of D major. In the key of D major, B minor is my 6 chord, and A is my 5 chord, and G is my 4 chord, and E minor is my 2 chord, and B minor is my 6 chord. And the reason I'm thinking of this as D major, because look what my chorus does. It reveals the tonic. D major, right? D major is the actual major key, and major keys, in my opinion, are more stable. So when we get to this D, it's like, oh, finally, this is our real tonic. We're really in the key of D. There is no pain, you are receding. The distant ship smoke on the horizon. And that's just 1 and 5, 1 and 5. Then the C major comes in, and I consider the C major to be the odd man out here. I consider this to be the magic trick chord, because C major has nothing to do with the key of B minor. It has nothing to do with the key of D major. I'm just thinking of it as a borrowed chord. We're thinking of it as a borrowed chord from fill in the blank. We're borrowing it from either D minor, or we're borrowing it from D Mixolydian, or we're borrowing it from D Dorian. I'm just going to think of it as a borrowed chord, flat 7. So now we have this flat 7 to my regular 4, flat 7 to regular 4, and then we just do this all again. D major, D major, D major, D major, a little bit of borrowed chord. Now, the A major that's confusing here to you is coming in here. And I don't feel it as weird. I just feel it as there's my 4 chord, and then finally we get the borrowed 7. Have become comfortably numb. Now, why the A feels weird? So, I mean, I think the right way to parse this is it's D major, and then the C is being borrowed. But it feels different, okay? There's something different going on here. When we go through all this stuff here, like the C to G to C to G, listen to what that does to our, like, the way our tonal center feels. When I just go playing C to G, like your ear doesn't know what is home base anymore? Like D doesn't even feel important anymore, you know? G kind of feels G, like this could be my tonic now, or even C could be, you know, like G feels like home. Now it feels like I'm doing 4 and 1 and 4 and 1 and 4 and 1, and then all of a sudden A. So this little thing here, this little continuation of a borrowed chord and then a 4 chord, and then a borrowed chord, and then a 4 chord. I believe this is getting us slightly and like disconnected. It's confusing us a little bit to where our real key is. And we're thinking, oh God, what key is it in? Because this is such a common cadence and your ear isn't sure where our tonal center is. So when this A crashes in, it doesn't feel familiar. It doesn't feel like our 5. Oh, wait, I think I got this wrong. The 5 chord here. Yeah. A is the 5. It doesn't feel like my 5 chord coming in. It feels like this kind of like new appearance of something. And I think that's because the C to G thing is just disorienting. Long story short, when I bring in a borrowed chord, I do it for little tiny bits. All right. So listen to this. Listen to D, A, D, A, now C, G, and D. Right? Hear how D is like, okay, yeah, that makes sense. We're in D. But when I do D, A, and then C, G, C, G, C, G, like, it's like, oh God, this is like, where am I at now? You know, I keep playing C and G. I'm not getting back to D. So it's just a hypothesis. That's all. And it's just my little, you know, my little theory right there. And, oh, I'm good. I'm saying the chat has figured out my my typo before I did. Exactly. So yes, that was supposed to be a 5 chord. I hope that didn't confuse things too much. Long story short, to answer your question, Peter, it's in D major. And then I consider it, this is my theory, is that I would consider this to be the key of D major. I consider the C to be a borrowed chord the entire time. But there's a lot of, you know, those 4-1 movements, those 5-1 movements, it's just a lot of ways to go out from there. So confusing. I know it's kind of a rant on such a simple chord progression, but that's a lovely, lovely chord progression to analyze. And also listen to how he accommodates it. You know, as a guitar player, when he's playing those leads, he's really just outlining the chord tones, so you don't get much of an indicator of what scale it is, because he's not playing scale so much. He's just kind of playing chord tones. So you can't really think, oh, what scale does this come from so much? Just kind of what chord does it come from? So hope that answers that. Jonathan Flynn saying, thanks for the answer last week. Much appreciated. Thank you, Jonathan. And Ron asking a question. If you want to get a commission to write a tune in a style or genre you're not very familiar with, how do you go about it? Do you listen to music in the genre actively, passively? Do you look up what popular, well-known artists are? Ron, absolutely. Absolutely. If somebody commissioned me to write a song for a musical, let's say, hey, we're doing a musical and it's about, you know, the streets of New York City in the 1970s or something like that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go listen to musicals, all right? And then I'm going to think about, okay, what are like the necessary components of a musical? Like, what rules can I not break? You know, you don't want to go out there and be like, I'm going to reinvent the musical, even though I've never made a musical before. That seems a little arrogant. So I don't want to, like, you know, reinvent the genre, but I want to do the job well. And somebody who's hiring me to write musical scores for them doesn't want me to reinvent the genre. They want me to do the job well. So I'm going to study musicals. I'm going to study as much as I can about the accuracy of, like, what period am I writing in, you know, what instruments are appropriate for that period and that genre. To me, that's just like, it's very engineered music. And just because you're engineering, it doesn't mean it's going to be like bad or soulless. Like, I feel that if you're actively engaged in making it as good as possible, then that's going to show through in your composition. It really will. But it's a very specific kind of thing. You're not making art for art's sake. You're not making it because it wants to exist. You're making it with one intention, that, like, you're being hired to do it. And I don't think that discounts the legitimacy of your art. I think there's plenty of commissioned work out there that's really, really good. I think some of my favorite pieces that I learned a lot from doing commissioned work, from doing little things here and there. I remember one of the biggest things I learned from was doing video game work, like a little thing for like an iPad Safari game. And I had to make these like African-based loops, and it was simple work, but I learned so much from it. And I was listening to African loops, and I was learning, you know, as much Swahili as I could to put in there. And it was just such a good process, and I was so pleased with the results of it. So I think it's excellent to be analyzing that stuff and really thinking about arrangement. What kind of instruments do they use? That's really huge. What kind of chords are used? What kind of rhythms? If you know the elements of music theory, it's very easy to just listen to 5 popular tracks that are within one genre and say, oh, these all share these common themes. They all share wide melodic leaps in my vocals. They all share lots of key changes. They all have rhythmic changes. You know, none of these songs stay in one group. So when you start seeing those similarities, you know, you start emulating those similarities as a commissioned writer. But I feel like that's just getting the job done, doing it right, getting your paycheck, and still being happy with it. So I think it's excellent advice. I really do. And Key of D Music, DDA, he's in the chat, is mentioning a few times, I'm sure has more experience in this as well. He says, I found myself in that position a couple of times. The quick answer is yes. Ask your clients what their favorite tracks are. Absolutely, to get a feel for what they're wanting to hear. This is huge. Very good comment, EDA. If you're working with a client, say, hey, what are you aiming for? Can you give me an example of what you want it to sound like? They're not going to know music theory. They're not going to say, oh, I'd like more glissando arpeggios. No, they're going to say, I want it to sound like the beginning of Lord of the Rings, or I want it to sound like a Clorox bleach commercial. Like, that's what they're going to tell you. And you're going to need to be able to figure out, you know, analyze those references. So great advice. Ask your clients for what their reference is. Listen, he also said, listen passively to appreciate the music on an emotional level. Very, very true. And then take a stab at analyzing the structure. What is the emotional context of these songs? When you're making a song for, let's say you got commissioned for a musical, like, you know, it's not just enough to write the music, but the emotion has to be right. If this is a scene where somebody dies and it's supposed to be tragic, like, that's way more important than anything else, is making the audience cry. So they're not going to cry because you used a complex chord. You know, they're going to cry because of, you know, when that chord came in and why it came in and the instrument it was played on. So really thinking about, you know, emotion. I'm guilty. I kind of think about that last. I think about analytics first, and then I listen to it and it's like, oh, there's not really much soul here, and then I have to go back and fix that. But, you know, everybody's a little different as far as how they're able to approach things. So great advice here from DDA. Definitely read through that as well. Jared, you're saying you've decided that now officially we must have a breakdown by Jake of a Floyd song in every Q&A. So I might one day. I always wanted to do a video on the Comfortably Numb solo. The Comfortably Numb solo, the last one, is, both of them I think are some of the finest guitar solos that have ever been recorded in a studio. Let's face it. Everybody loves them, even if they don't play the guitar. If you do play the guitar, you love those solos. There's a lot to talk about as far as, like, you know, reliance on a lick, you know, the one solo in there, the one lick in there. It's been a while, so it's that lick. There's 3 different variations of that lick and the final solo, and it's pretty much the same thing, and you never get sick of it. You're never thinking, oh, there he goes again playing that same damn lick. No, every time you get it, you're like, yeah. And I think there's a lot to learn there as far as recycling licks and little variations, and you know, it goes back to like a crutch. That's a crutch, but crutches aren't always a bad thing. You know, crutches help you get around. So all right, so we're going to keep on moving forward here. Daniel Dratch stumped me. He said, can I analyze Ordinary World by Duran Duran? He said, I can't tell if it is not obvious to me key or just a bunch of borrowed chords. Okay, so if you guys want to do yourself a little puzzle, go listen to it. Ordinary World, Duran Duran. I'd heard it before my brain ever knew about music, and now listen to it now, it is a nightmare. So here's all I can say. The verses make a little bit of sense to me, okay? The verses of that song do make sense to me because you can think of them as just being in C-sharp Dorian. So if I listen to C-sharp Dorian, I've got C-sharp minor, and then G-sharp, wait, where are we at? Is this right? I wrote it down here first. Where are we at? C sharp minor, and then E, and then F sharp. Yeah. So this is the verse progression, C sharp minor to E to F sharp major. So if we listen to that, C sharp minor, E, F sharp. We can think of this as C sharp Dorian, right? We can think of this as a 1 chord, and then our diatonic 3 chord, and then our diatonic 4 chord. Now the next chord progression of the song changes, and we get more Dorian. We get C sharp minor, we get G sharp minor, the minor 5 chord, and then we get a D sharp major, which is not in the key, and that takes us to E, and then finally it resolves us to B for our chorus. So like first, clearly some magic there. But I kept this all in orange because this is all diatonic to, well, not quite diatonic. It's pretty much all C sharp Dorian. What I want to talk about, though, is this little thing here, because I think this does make sense. Here's the one thing I can parse with you. Let's look at this chord progression. C sharp minor, G sharp minor, D sharp major, or D sharp 7 to E, to resolving back to B. That's hilarious. That is wild little change right there, and it didn't make quite much sense to me. But if we think about being in the key of B, all right, just imagine you're in the key of B, all right? If you're in the key of B, it's pretty common to see a D sharp major. All right, listen, here's the key of B. Here's a D sharp major, or D sharp 7. Hopefully you know this as the major 3 chord, this guy. And you can also think of it as a secondary dominant, but you can also just think of it as a major 3 chord that often bumps up to the 4 chord. So it's pretty common in something like B to go B, 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 and then D sharp, and then E, and then back to B. Listen, B, 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 D sharp, and then E, and then back to B. You could also do something like B, D sharp, and then resolve it to like a G sharp minor, and then the E, and then back to B. What I'm trying to say is that all this stuff seems like it's related to the key of B, all right? All of this stuff seems like it's at the key of B. And then finally, we get a B chord. But as soon as we get to that B chord, it's like, finally, we're going to go into B major? No. Everything after that, like the choruses are, you get a B major, and then everything else is from some other mode. Like, I don't know what you want to call it. I would think of most of these chords as being from minor or Dorian, but for some reason, we have a B major tonic. So it's like, these chords are B minor-ish, B Dorian-ish, but we have a B major tonic. So it's a complete mess. How did they write it is the important question, Daniel. How did they write it? They wrote good chords that they liked together. I think that there might be something going on here. I didn't listen into the lyrics, but Ordinary Worlds, to have such unordinary chords, there might be another layer of art there that I am just realizing. I didn't analyze the lyrics, so it may be intentionally crazy. They may have been like, let's write some wild chords. It may have just been, we liked what we did, and now poor Jake has to figure out what it means. This happens all the time. I was just working with some of my former students that wrote some punk rock that makes no sense. And I love it. I mean, I love every bit of it. It's just happy and fun, and you would never guess that it contains the most morbid chord changes ever. And some poor sap's going to have to figure it out. And they weren't thinking, let's write morbid chords. They were just having fun. So, it's two ways to approach it, but that's a nasty one, Daniel, and you got me. I have no clear-cut answer, all right? Gustavo is saying, I am mostly a bass player, and I've been using your videos and music course to write my own riffs. I haven't really written any full song, but I am happy I have been able to come up with some simple, cool rock metal riffs on my own, in great part thanks to you. The way I have been doing it is a bit analog to the way you show in your videos. I usually select a scale mode, grab notes from it, and then try to add rhythm to it. Then try to get it under my fingers, and then try to play it along with a drum track. Then eventually I select something to be played different if played on a guitar, like power chords, or if I play it in the high section of the bass, etc. But the problem I find myself is that I feel this process is a bit too constrained to a box. Sometimes when I see other YouTube videos, I see they do things more natural. They come up with some rhythm and then hit or find some sort of notes easier. And I'm wondering if there's anything easier I could do or anything else I could do to get some more of this natural feeling, or if just more practice and writing and more stuff and more writing more stuff until this eventually becomes more of the norm. Gustavo, I think you're off to a very, very good start. If this is your process right now, I wouldn't worry about it. I wouldn't stress out if your process feels mechanical right now. What I will say is that I will encourage you to focus more on rhythm because in my experience, you can get away with bloody murder if you are focusing on just rhythm, and it completely frees you out of the box. So let me just turn off some of these effects here a little bit, and let me kind of talk about what I'm try to refer to what I'm talking about here. So if I've just got like a drum machine here, all right, let's get some really boring drum machine, and I mean boring. This is not going to be exciting, but I want to at least get something to go off of, because I want to, like, I'm talking about working rhythmically first. So, and I'll actually pull this up here. We're opening up Reason, and in the Reason presets, these are all presets. We'll open up metal drums, 90 beats a minute rock snare. Okay, so now I've got something, right? And I'm just going to be thinking rhythm. I'm not even going to look at my guitar. I'm not even going to think about where my fingers are. I'm just going to put them anywhere on my guitar and just think about rhythm. Now, this sounds like a nightmare, but just by staying here, all right, just by staying here, I'm getting ideas already. And this is where it comes back to, everybody hopefully knows the phrase by now, repetition legitimizes. Just by hearing something a few times, it gives me an idea. So I'm hearing this note now. Now I'm hearing a C sharp major 7 chord, right? Okay, so I'm getting somewhere. Like, I heard this note as a major 7, and I thought, well, this could be the chord that I'm playing. Now I was thinking chord. Instead of just mashing my hand on my fretboard, I was able to piece together a chord. And now I want to hear... I know I want to hear that on the melody now. Da 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 da. But I don't know what the low notes want to do. Okay, so I want to do that now. I want to do an F sharp over C sharp, and then I want to go back to C sharp major 7. So I'm basically want to do a 4-1 in C sharp major. So this is where theory comes in. Like, I could have just played around, but now I know, and I can tell my piano player, hey, play me a C sharp major 7 chord, and he'll do it. And now that'll fit in beautiful on top of my... Ugh. You know what I mean? And you can turn that into riffs now that you've got a chord progression. Now that I've got an idea, what if we arpeggiate those things like a... I like that riff. That's a nice riff. And that's the kind of thing where now that I've got a riff, bring your drummer into the room, and you know what your drummer's not going to do? Hopefully your drummer has more interesting ideas when you hear something like... Hopefully your drummer's thinking about action. You can play off that rhythm now. So, you know, a lot of it is a collaborative process, working with other musicians as well. But to answer your question specifically, Gustavo, I think you should be focusing on rhythm more than anything else. I would suggest all of you, every single one of you, I would suggest you go over to David Bruce Composer's YouTube channel. I love David Bruce's channel. He is just still to this day one of my most inspirational YouTube channels to watch. He recently did a video on Stravinsky and The Rite of Spring. And if you haven't listened to The Rite of Spring, it is like one of my top favorite compositions of all time. I'm not big into classical music, but that song is incredible, and it has had a huge influence on me. And David Bruce does a great little demonstration of writing with dissonance and how dependent it is on rhythm and form and structure. So, you know, you don't need to be in a scale, Gustavo. You don't need to be on a chord. But, you know, once you realize, oh, this could be a scale, this could be a chord. That's where theory really helps me out. It helps me add new layers on top of it. But I try not to think about like, I'm going to write in C sharp major today. Like this little thing just came out in C sharp major because that's where I put my hand. I squashed it on here. It started like this. And actually, I think I like that more with the G sharp on the bass now. So imagine the G, you know, I got all these ideas just because I just did something and I played it enough times to think, what could I do, you know? So I hope that helps. Yeah, Monster Montage, you're going to have to listen to Ordinary World. It's wild chords. That's all I know. Absolutely weird chords. Some of the weirdest I've heard, to be honest. I mean, you know, it's easy to write weird chords. That's not a hard thing to do. It's hard to write weird chords that flow that well together. And like I said, I'm curious to see how they actually did it. I bet they were just writing, you know. Okay, so we've got Jonathan Flynn asking a great question. I know they are great musicians. Why do I hate Rush? Well, Jonathan Flynn, I am not a big Rush fan. I am a big, well, so here's the deal. I am not a big fan of Alex Lifeson's guitar solos. Me personally, every time I've ever tried to learn an Alex Lifeson solo for like a gig or for like a show or a performance, I've always hated it. I always felt like I'm trying to learn somebody's improvisation. Like, imagine, you know, just like, I don't know, imagine if I just kind of threw the paintbrush all over the wall and, you know, had fun with it. And now I said, now copy that. Like, it's really hard to do that. And I think his solos didn't have a lot of form, in my opinion, and they weren't as copacetic as the solos I like the most. I grew up on Metallica. You know, listen to Kirk Hammett's early solos. They are meticulous. There's boom, 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 boom. It's like a, you know, 1, 2, 3 punch. Everything is, you know, it's harmonized, so that means it's written. And I always liked that. So it does come down to preference. Alex Lifeson clearly liked playing much more flowing guitar solos. For me, that's just never did it. You know, it never hit the spot for me. Also, Rush gets into the cheese factor for me, where Dream Theater gets into the cheese factor to me. Like, I really like Dream Theater's music most of the time, but like 60% of the time, no, I would say, okay, yeah, I mean, a good percentage of the time, Dream Theater gets way too cheesy for me, and it's usually in the vocals. It's something about the songs just don't feel smooth. They feel like they were just kind of crammed into place. And I get a little bit of that with Rush vocals sometimes in lyrics. They feel a little bit too flowery and a little too storytelling. Now, I still appreciate the hell out of it. I still like love playing Tom Sawyer. I think Tom Sawyer, like, who cares if it's like their big song? It is an incredible composition. And I can listen to them every time. Every time I hear a band playing Rush live on stage, I'm like, awesome, they're playing Rush. So, you know, I certainly don't hate them, but I am not as enthralled by them as I'm supposed to be. You know, people in the music world, there's certain bands you're supposed to have the utmost respect for, and I respect the hell out of them. It's a matter of taste. That's all. And, you know, Jared's saying here, I don't care for lead vocals. I'm not into complex lyrics, and the songs don't have a repetition to legitimize. You know, yeah, it's just, you know, and Paul saying music is all personal preference. Absolutely. And he couldn't get into Yes, despite the similarities. I would rather listen to old Yes than Rush. And I think it's just because it's maybe like the synth stuff is weirder to me. I thought the synth stuff for Rush was very fine and very well organized, where I felt like the synth stuff in Yes was way more feral and off the map. And I find that to be more interesting. So I can't answer, Jonathan, but you're not alone. I wouldn't worry about that. I wouldn't worry about you, you know, hating, you know, Rush. Everybody. Dream Theater's my favorite band, and I hate them. Okay, I'm sorry, but like I'll have to do a video on it one day. How can they be my favorite band, and how can I be so disappointed by them at the same time? But that's what it is. You know, nobody's perfect. Nobody's going to deliver you 100% of the content that you like. You know, I think of it as like, you know, politicians or something like that. You might have one politician that you actually agree with, but you probably don't agree with them like 100%. Or, you know, you're going to find one politician you agree with him or her 100% of the time, all the time. No, the best you're going to do is like 50% of the time. So you got to pick and choose. You know, even my favorite artists, they're going to write clunkers. They're going to write stuff I think is garbage. What I write, I think that good 80% of what I do is not that good. So like, I just have to expect that out of other people too, because they're human as well. So I'm sure there's some Rush songs that you would really love, Jonathan. Okan correcting me on D flat major instead of C sharp major. You know what's funny, Okan? The very first time I was taught the C sharp major scale was literally by the only music theory teacher I had in high school music theory. He's like, the C sharp major scale. Just take every note from C and just sharpen. There you go, C sharp major. I was like, okay. And like, he never told me like, you know, about avoiding it. But, you know, a lot of compositions are still in C sharp. So, and you know my take on that. I really don't care. You guys all know that C sharp is D flat. So, John Hopkins is saying, as a Rush fan since 1980, I have to admit Rush takes a while to get. Every album they've released, I had to listen to several times before I might say, yeah, I really like this. Totally, John Hopkins. Certain music requires an investment. And some people hate this. Certain music, you have to invest a certain amount of work into listening to it to gain the benefit and appreciation out of it. And a lot of people will say, no, that's not what music's for. You're not supposed to think about music. You're just supposed to dance to it. You're supposed to feel it. Whatever. Like, there's not one music for one person, okay? There's music for dancing. There's music for sleeping. There's music for all sorts of activities, all right? And, like, you know, there's also music for just, like, you know, when I think of Rush and Dream Theater's appeal, it's like this brainy, cerebral, analytical solving of a puzzle kind of thing. And there's music for that too. There's nothing wrong with that, okay? So, you know, certain people are going to like certain kind of music for certain things. And I really do think that classical music and progressive rock, if you are willing to invest the time and mental effort into figuring that stuff out, you will be rewarded. You will be pleasantly rewarded with all these extra bonuses like, ooh, listen to this thing that I heard. Ooh, like listen to this melody. You'll be able to track complex things that because you listened to it 100 times and it didn't make sense the first 99 times, but the 100th time you finally got it. So, you know, if you trust a composer, if you trust that the composer was making their music with intent and it wasn't just like, oh, I'm going to spam notes all over and hope that people get used to it, then you'll find that, yeah, you can keep listening to music and get more and more appreciation out of it because you're understanding it at deeper levels. So C sharp minor is totally a thing, Jared, because, you know, E major is relative to C sharp minor. So I would totally do C sharp minor. Absolutely. But, yeah, that's just me personally. One day I'll do the music theory video on why I hate enharmonics because it really only matters, everybody. Remember, it only matters if we're writing things down on paper. As long as we all understand that C sharp and D flat are the same thing, I really don't care what you call it. It's just about once you put it on paper, one of those is going to look a lot easier to read than the other one. Some people will still argue with me on that. They'll say, no, there's a difference. And I just can't. I've tried to understand their perspective and I can't. So I'm not going to say they're wrong, but until I understand it, I'm just not going to teach that perspective. All right, Darren Thorne is asking, I'm a member and love your work. I need to download your jam tracks to avoid audio driver conflicts. Where are the links to download? Darren Thorne, what I'd like you to do is message me specifically which jam tracks you're looking for, and I can just send them to you directly. I will work on getting more of them uploaded to my website. I've been a little lazy with getting my website updated with all the other stuff that I want to do, but it should... you know, I've posted so much stuff over the last 4 years, I don't even know where everything's at. I've gone through different hard drives, and I'm not nearly as organized as I should be. So I'm happy to post them, though, Darren, and I'm happy to make them free for everybody. If you search here on Patreon for jam tracks, or if you just search here on Patreon for MP3, you might find across quite a few different MP3s that you could work with. So... Oh, you guys are still arguing about enharmonics in the chat. You're all banned. I'm banning you all from my chat. No enharmonic arguing in the chat. It's not allowed. All right, I love this question from Jared. Jared saying, here's a fun question for you. What makes good background music? I get asked to create tracks as background for commercials sometimes, and it's a struggle to find a balance. It's a struggle to find a balance between being energetic without being noticed and being boring or terrible. You have a lot of good promo music for your channel and some of your humorous endeavors. An example of a track I hate, which you hear a lot on YouTube, is this one. I'm unsure whether I hate it because it is too happy, or I've just heard it so many times I want it to go away. Tantacruel did a video titled Corporate Music. That might be too loud. So Tantacruel did a video entitled Corporate Music, How to Compose with No Soul. Go link to it. Go watch it, everybody, which I think expresses a lot of the angst I have for this genre. What's your take on making background tracks that don't suck as much? Well, my take on background music. So I honestly think that making that stuff is excellent practice. I think that every single one of you, if you've not tried to do it already, should try to make a generic background corporate song that you could sell cancerous chemicals to. Like, think of like the worst, think of like a Monsanto company that like, you know, like it's always this like empowering music, you know, like you could literally find like the worst company ever and they're going to make these inspiring chords. Try it. Just try it. And you'll be surprised that it's kind of hard to get it just right. It's actually harder than you might think to get it just right. But this is about appealing to the median. This is about like nailing the prompt as perfectly as possible with literally zero artistic intent. You're not trying to accomplish it. You're not trying to put your own spin on it. You're not trying to tell a story. You're not trying to get a message across. You're literally just trying to exploit the listener's emotions. You know, you're trying to make them feel inspired. You're trying to make them feel cool. Like this music that we just heard, this stuff that Jared posted, I would write a song like this. I would write a song like this if I wanted things to sound cool. If I wanted like, hey, I'm Jake Lizio and check it out. Like I'm, you know, playing 12 guitars at the same time. If I was making YouTube that had to be cool, I would make music like that because that's what people think are cool. This is like, that's what people think is cool. Like that's the median. That is the average. That's the middle ground. And I think there's a lot of value in exploring the middle ground as far as like understanding this is the average. This is what the general public wants. I think it's great exercise and it also helps you learn to avoid it. Me personally, I mean, if my stuff actually sounds like this and if it starts to sound like this, I think, oh God, like, you know, I don't want my actual art to sound like this, but I think it's a good thing to shoot for. And I think that it's a very good, like, I don't know, it's like making a Twinkie. I think there's a lot of value in learning to make a Twinkie, you know, making it look nice and trim and proper and it appeals to lots of people. And, you know, my favorite thing, the beginning of my Ultimate Modal poster video, or I did the video, all the different, are you tired of practicing your modes? You know, and I did like this little, I wrote music that was like bad infomercial music because I wanted it to sound like a bad infomercial. And I worked really hard at making it sound like a bad infomercial song. So I think this stuff is just, I mean, it's functional music. You know what I mean? It's absolutely functional music. It's not meant to to actually give you artistic inspiration. It's supposed to, you know, it's supposed to, you know, amp you up to buy a product or to keep watching a montage. That's what it's there for. And I just think there's value in understanding that. I think there's value in approaching music from functional points of view. But I just, you know, I mean, unless it's your job, I can't see, you know, doing it for practice more than a few times. I've tried to make tracks like this, and one day I'll do a video on how to sell anything with chords, because I want to do a video on like fake how to manipulate people with chords and how to like literally like steal their money, because it happens a lot. You know, like think about, I just imagine like, you know, like some chemical corporation that spends every day like pouring chemicals into the ocean, and then they have these videos of like glorious chords and like people sitting on the meditating on the mountaintop, and like there's like babies smiling, and it's just like that music. You can already hear the chord progression in your head, and it just feels very like manipulative. And at the end it's like Monsanto or something like that, some company that's, you know, led to like millions of deaths or something. So all right, let's keep on moving forward. Wolfie asks, hey, bit of a basic question and a slight follow-up from the last stream, but do you have any good practice routines for practicing mode mixture? If I'm going to work with chromaticism, mastering that seems like a good, proper first step. Wolfie, I do think that the key to practicing modal mixture, I think there's two things you want to think about. First off, really work with just major and minor. And the differences between your thirds, the differences between your sixths, and between your sevenths. So really experiment with a simple chord change that only you can say, okay, over this chord, I'm going to have a major scale, but over this other chord, I'm going to have a major scale with a flatted third. and I'm only going to adjust that third. So I'm only accenting the flat, I'm only going to accent the flat at 6. I'm only going to accent the flat at 7. It can be a lot of work if you decide to, I'm going to change all my scales over this chord. It takes a lot of work, and you might be losing the point. You might be losing the magic. The magic might be the shifting of just the 7th, where over the tonic chord it was a major 7th, but when you borrow the chord, you move it to a flat 7th. That might be where the gold is, and you never got to discover that gold because you were too busy going up and down scales. So focus in on little things. Focus in on saying, okay, between this chord, use my example. I have the modal mixture practice track on my channel. It goes E major to A minor. So just practice over E major, practice doing E major. But then maybe over A minor, just practice doing only the flatted third. You know what I mean? Only taking the G sharp and making it a G instead. And that way you don't have to keep track of everything else. You're only looking at the third and you're just adjusting it bit by bit. And then do it again with just the 6th and then do it again with just the 7th. I think it's a helpful way to do it. And so I'm going to checking back in the chat here. Yeah, you guys are talking about some of my intro music. Yeah, my intro music for my stuff is very functional. It's like, let's do what you're supposed to do, The median chord, I mean, that's the stuff you hear in every one of those, I hear it a lot in, radio ads for, suicide helplines. They make them, more depressing just to hear those ads because they're covered in that same exact chord progression. But some of my intro music is meant to be just generic, and sometimes I'm just trying to, it's just fun a lot of the times, for sure. So anyways, Wolfie, I hope that helps as far as practicing your modal mixture, just kind of focusing on the small things. Also, when it comes to practicing modal mixture, try to remember that, if you're in a major-ish key, something with a major tonic, borrowing from other things with a major tonic is a lot easier. You don't have to worry about moving the thirds around, but you'll just have to move different tones. So it's easy to start with just major versus minor, but it's important to think about major versus Mixolydian versus Lydian, and they all have major tonics. And it's also important to think of Phrygian versus Dorian versus Aeolian. Those all have minor tonics. So kind of grouping the minors together, grouping the majors together. I would also approach it like that. Now, some heavy-duty questions coming from Lusk Luther. Lusk is saying, altering one or some notes from the major scale gives many scales, many modes. How are these created? How to alter notes in a scale to create new scales and identify their flair? Well, I think the more important question here is the second one you answered, Lusk. What is the reason behind selecting those 7 notes for a major scale, for any key in an octave? How did the person who created the scale did it? So, where do the 7 notes come from? If you, and you need to read the response here. Ron answered this question very, very detailed, okay? And literally stuff that I didn't want to get into because I don't like talking about stuff like this because I'm not very clear and direct with it. Long story short, if you took a note like C, all right? Here's a C. And let's pretend it's not 100 hertz, but let's pretend this note was vibrating at 100 times a second. Let's just pretend. And you said, you know what I'm going to do? Here's a note that's vibrating 100 times a second. Here's a note that's 100 hertz. What I'm going to do is I'm going to double it. And what I get is 200 hertz. And when you do that, you get this note. And that's just another C. And then if you say, okay, let's just double it again, well, what you would get is 400 hertz, right? And you'd get another C. And if you double that again, you'd get another 800 hertz. And that's another C right there. So those are all Cs. They're just doubling the frequency. So when I just double frequencies, I end up with the same note over and over again. I just end up with octaves of the same note. Instead of doing a frequency of 2 to 1, that's what an octave is. And an octave is a ratio of 2 to 1, so this was like 200 hertz, 100 hertz. Instead of that, let's do a ratio of 3 to 2. So something like if this was 100 hertz, this would be 150 hertz. And that gives us a ratio of a perfect fifth. That gives us a ratio of 1.5 to 1 or 3 to 2. Now, if I try to keep building fifths, then what I get is all these different notes of the circle of fifth. You get every single note of our 12-tone scale. Now, this wouldn't happen if I tried to do circles of octaves, right? If I just keep building octaves, I end up with the same note over and over again. If I try to do a circle of major thirds, well, that's not going to work. I can only play a major third 3 times, and then it takes me back. I'd only get 3 different notes. If I try to do a circle of minor thirds, well, I'd only have 4 notes. You see how this problem? If I try traveling only 4 half steps at a time, then my scale would only have 4 notes. So you could have a circle of fourths would give us all the notes, right? We just created the circle of fifths by building fifths. You can also get every note by doing fourths, or you could get every note by doing minor seconds, or you could get every note by doing major sevenths. But the most simplistic way, I mean, the mathematical way, I'm pretty sure this was formed through Pythagorean, I believe it goes back to Pythagoras, but I might be wrong, is that this ratio of perfect fifths, if you keep building this ratio of perfect fifths, you'll end up with every single note within, now they're all spread out across octaves, of course. But let's put it this way. Once you have all these 7 notes, once you have the notes C, D, E, F, G, A, B, or these ratios and frequencies, there is no correct one, all right? The Greek modes, major, or Ionian, Dorian, Lydian, or Ionian, Dorian, Phrygian, Lydian, Mixolydian, Aeolian, and Locrian, those are the Greek modes. And there wasn't one of them that was major. There wasn't like, oh, we need to do Ionian as the first one. No, they were all kind of equal. They were just, there's no starting point for this circle of fifth. There's no starting point for this group of notes that happens to have these harmonic relationships. You know, Gregorian chant didn't have an Ionian tonal center. It was just based around different versions of this. Now, I'm getting into history that's beyond me, so you'll have to talk to early music sources about what modes were they actually written in. But as far as my understanding, the only reason that the 7 notes of major are like the major one is just because that's the one we got used to the most. So I'm curious to see if the chat has any input on that. As far as like, Jared says I'm at least right about, or Ron's saying I'm at least right about Pythagoras starting all this kind of stuff. But yeah, Lust, to answer your questions, all mathematics. So what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to start researching temperament, Lusk. You're going to want to start understanding perfect tuning or perfect temperament versus just temperament. Those are the topics you're going to want to explore. I am not qualified to teach them yet, but one day I would really like to make videos on that, but I need a lot more animation skills to really make the video I want to make. You also asked, what is the reason between jumping alternate notes to harmonize a scale to create chords? Can we do something like fourths to harmonize? Yes, you can harmonize with anything you like. There is no right or wrong way to harmonize anything. What I am going to do is show you a great example of a major second harmony that I really like. The song is called Ergon Data. I'm probably pronouncing it wrong, and maybe, let's hope I don't get copyright banned for this, but I feel like this is going to be public performance. Keep waiting for it. You'll hear these major second harmonies. And I love that. I mean, that is just like, it's like a laser beam to my brain, just getting those major second harmonies. And that's like completely illegal in Western music. You're not allowed to just throw major seconds in there. But why? I mean, I've done, you know, fourth harmonies are very open. When you do like just straight fourths, it sounds really odd. It sounds like, I don't know how else to say it. It's like the lids come off of something. Like there's just this hollowness to it. It's not harmonic. You're probably going to be breaking the rules, and you're not going to have that sweetness, that richness of thirds in there. But I think that I think it's just like wonderful stuff. So Lusk, you can absolutely do that. You can harmonize however you want. But when you do harmonize in weird ways, you're probably breaking the key, right? You'll probably be bringing in notes that are out of the key. And sometimes that sounds good. Sometimes that sounds bad. As long as it sounds good. All right. That's the number one rule. It's easier to harmonize, though. It's easier to sound good when you just stay in a scale. That's what I've learned. It's just, you get, you know, if you want to stay out of the scale, then you have to know a lot. For me, I have to know a lot more music theory. I have to know a lot more chords. It seems like I need a lot more knowledge to make a harmony work when it uses more than 7 notes. It's just a lot trickier for me personally. You also ask, melody comes first or rhythm chords first? Either. Absolutely, I'm not going to answer that, Lust, because there is no right answer. Sometimes the melody comes first, sometimes the rhythm comes first, sometimes the chords comes first. It is a complete variance on every single one of them. And yeah, the name of that song there, once again, here, I'll just show you. This is what it's called, Ergendeda, Ergendeda. I love the track. I really want you all to listen to it with headphones on, find a good performance of it. And it's just got some of the coolest. There's even like Indian, like I hear like a doom taka taka ta doom ta. It's almost like a Konakol thing. So I don't know the history behind the piece. It's just awesome. And that major second, I swear, it feels like somebody's like MK Ultra mind beaming me. There's something so sharp, something so precise and slicing about those major seconds. Just like, I don't know, there's an effect there. And once I heard that, I was like, oh boy, I cannot forget this. I cannot forget the effect that just blasted major seconds into my mind has, because it was such a pronounced thing. So definitely check it out. Jay, take it easy. I was going to answer your question here. Jay, I'll answer your question right now, actually. Your question was about the modes of major and the 3 notes per string diagram. Since we're meeting up soon, Jay, we'll follow up on this because I don't know exactly which charts you want if you're looking for them all together, but I would love to make a new chart for everybody. It's been a long time since I've posted charts. So when we meet up soon, Jay, give me what you're looking for, and I'm sure if that's your desires as a student, I'm sure other people will have that same request. So we'll talk soon. We'll get that chart figured out, and then I'll post it for everybody as well. Okay, so all right, now Lusk, I do really recommend it looks like you did read Ron's answer, and Ron, thank you so much for answering this, because like I said, I didn't want to write all this out, and this is all, as far as I understand, this is all absolutely accurate. I didn't see anything in here that I considered to be incorrect. Jared also has provided quite a few excellent links as where the 12-tone scale comes from. I haven't seen these, but I would be watching lots of YouTube. I think that will really help out. So all right, and I'm going to go down here to a question from Miguel. Miguel says, my music theory knowledge has expanded so much. I never stop learning with you. Thank you, Miguel. My question is, do you have a 3 or 4 times payment monthly for your music theory course? I would like to buy it, but I don't have all the money yet. If it's not possible, I'll wait. There are many videos of yours that I haven't watched yet. Miguel, and to anybody else who is watching there, so if money is even remotely an issue, just send me an email and I can hook you up. I'll give you a coupon code, and you only have to pay $5, and then if you would like to tip extra later on down the road, you can. But I'm way more concerned about people getting the course that need the course. That is a bigger priority to me than making money off of every single sale. So, Miguel, please just contact me, and I will send you the coupon code. It's going to expire in a day, so I'll make a new coupon code for next month, and that way you can use that. And then my only request is you don't even have to pay the rest of it. My only request is if you did get the course at a discount rate, or if you got it at a rate that you think is really a good rate, then just tell other people. I was on Reddit not that long ago, and there was a lot of controversy over some other music YouTubers' courses and their products. And there was a lot of sentiment that it's never worth that amount of money for a music course. And that disappoints me, because I tried so hard to price this at something that I think is extremely valuable. I think that compared to real life lessons, I can't imagine something more valuable than what I put out. I mean, I really, really do think it's a steal. So it was sad to see that there's a mentality that no course is worth that amount of money. So if you do think it's worth that amount of money, then just, if you hear those conversations, chime in your 2 cents on Reddit or Facebook or wherever you hear those conversations, or post a thing, because I really do think it's worth it. But yeah, we can absolutely get you taken care of. That I swear that's a bigger priority of mine. It doesn't help me at all that you can't have that course. So we'll get you taken care of, Miguel. And that goes for anybody else listening to as well. So I am no saint, right, Ron? Okay, absolutely no saint. We're all sinners. Let's put it that way. But hopefully we're all trying to do better. That's the hope. Charles Cole is saying, can you do a video lesson on the double harmonic major scale? Ooh, yes, I want to do a video on the double harmonic major scale so bad. It's such a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful scale. And if you don't know the double harmonic major scale, that's going to be... Let's get some effects on here. That's going to be a Phrygian dominant scale, all right? We'll do it in E. But the 7th note is a natural 7th. Now, if you know anything about Phrygian dominant, it has a root and a flat 2. So if you have a root and a flat 2 and a natural 7, then you have a little chromatic cluster. And that just playing around. Here's my quick little advice on the scale, double harmonic major, or the Byzantine scale is how I was usually taught it. Focus on that chromatic cluster. Play around with what works in that chromatic cluster. Very, very cool foreign flavor. All right, so every time I'm getting that little chromatic cluster, I'm kind of accenting it just so you hear that there's something weird going on there. And I'm just kind of, goofing around with it right now. I wouldn't necessarily recommend writing full chord progressions in Byzantine. I don't really believe in that stuff so much. I mean, you can play around with it, to certainly experiment with it, but I think it works much better in this context where I just have a root note, or I have just like a root and a fifth, or I just have a tonic chord like E major. It would be very, very fun to play this kind of thing. It would be very fun to play this thing over just one chord or one droning note, but I don't necessarily mean writing entire chord progressions in Byzantine. But eventually, yes, to answer your question, eventually I will do that video. Eventually I'll do every video. Every video that I can think of, at least. Anthony Bianco saying, hello, Jake. Sometimes I make instrumental or production mistakes that I think sound better than my original intention. Does this happen to you, and do any examples come to mind in your music? Yes, Anthony, this is such a crucial part to making music as a producer, is understanding when a mistake actually helps you out. In my experience, the mistakes that help me out the most are the ones that are like writing mistakes, where I accidentally moved like a track to the wrong spot and I really liked the effect it had. Or I accidentally sang a harmony wrong and I liked how it did. So what it does is it makes me change my original intent. It makes me say, oh, instead of doing A, let's let this mistake guide my direction to B. It's very rare that I just screw something up and leave it in there because I like it so much. Usually what happens is I screw something up and that triggers, oh, wow, I caught something I couldn't have written. I caught something that was outside of my ability to compose as an accident, and it actually complements things better. So in my experience, that's what the happy accident in the studio is normally. It's normally that you stumbled across something lucky. It's less often that like, oh, I hit the wrong note and I like the way it sounded. Oh, my guitar, the string broke and I like the way it sounded. That does happen, and it takes a very good, aware, mindful producer to be really thinking about if that stuff's actually applying. But I think it's extremely important to keep your ears open for variations. You know, you have a game plan when you go into the studio. You have some sort of vision of your song, but you need to be willing to accept new alternatives. You need to know that if new little paths open up, you can go down those. I think a good example, I go back to David Lynch a lot of times, the filmmaker, as inspiration, because as a director, I've heard a lot of actors and actresses that worked with David Lynch and said that when tragedy happened on the set, you know, when things went wrong, he was always capitalizing on it. When, you know, the light bulb was burned out, he was always fine. You know, it was often that, oh, wow, I like the way oh, let's keep that burned light bulb in here because now it's, you know, it's given this now a creepier effect. So, you know, it's a very Taoist way of kind of working with a project, is that you're working with the problems, you're working with the challenges that come along with you, and you're implementing them into your song. So yes, I think it's an extremely important philosophy. I think it's a very important idea. I cannot give you very specifics right now when it comes to production things. I've got so much music, and it's so hard for me to remember how many of those things were like. I mean, I can give you, they would all be my own examples that I can show you because I don't know how many other actual songs, you know, and with clients too. I'm thinking back to a girl where, you know, it was just like a complete mistake where I moved her vocal part onto the wrong part of the song. And we were both looking at each other like, I kind of like that. And she was like, I kind of like that too. And I'm like, well, can we work with this? So we started writing it as a mistake thing that kind of makes sense. And, you know, stuff like that. I just think it's very important to be able to adapt if you have the time, you know, and especially when you're trying to make art. I don't think it should be very, you know, I did a video not that long ago on, you know, prepare for the studio. That's like the one perspective, obviously. And I tried to, you know, if you're going to the studio, you should prepare. But if you're making music, you shouldn't be that rigid with it unless your song's fully written. If you're going to the studio ahead of time, hopefully your song's fully written. But if you're working with a producer to write with them, which I do a lot with my clients, because I've never charged premium rates. So a lot of my clients are just suburban, you know, folksy songwriters. And they come in and I always charge them very cheap. And we're working together to figure these things out. And I enjoy the hell out of that. I enjoy the hell out of working with these people to solve those issues and to come up with those ideas. But, you know, that's the studio I'm running. You know, I'm running this little one-person studio. If you're going to, you know, an actual music studio with actual producers and mix engineers, you're getting charged $200 an hour minimum, and it's in and out. You're not having somebody like, you know, hey, let's try this. Hey, let's experiment with this, and I won't charge you. So, you know, hopefully everybody can find that environment to record with and to work with. And, you know, I just created that environment because I obviously it didn't exist anywhere else. And I just accidentally ended up creating that environment, and helped me out a lot and helped my clients out a lot. So, all right, let's continue with the last question. We are going to ask, it's a question from Nick White. And Nick White, oh, wait, no, there's one more from DDA. I want to answer DDA's question. Let's answer DDA's first. So DDA asked this question last time. He said, I am working on a short track for a client. We're probably too late now, DDA, because this is a week old and maybe your client already needed it. Working on a short track for a client, and he's been struggling to find a melody that is appealing and emotive despite the short duration. After several attempts, I recorded this take, and he was asking for some thoughts on it. And I do want to give you some thoughts on it. So let's take a listen to DDA's track here, which, we'll just take a listen to it here first. I would like to first say, DDA, excellent work. I think it's very, 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 very good work. And I'm sure it's not done. I know that you're still working on it, or you were at the time, but I think it sounds great. The things I'm just going to comment on here, I do think this sounds, I already see it in the chat, Stranger Things influenced, right? I do get a lot of that Stranger Things influence here at the beginning, which is great. I didn't call it a ripoff. It's nowhere near a ripoff. That, you know, Stranger Things intro was ripped off of like every John Carpenter soundtrack. I think, is that the guy I'm thinking of? Like, I've heard that stuff from every movie in the 70s and 80s. So like, it's definitely an influence, but I love it. It works really, really, really well. The other thing I want to comment is when I was hearing this, I was hearing a strong 6/8 feel, or like a 12/8 feel. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And then I looked down and I saw you had it programmed in 4/4. So just a little curious. I mean, there's nothing wrong with programming it in 4/4. In that case, you're treating this all on the triplet grid. But it's important to remember that it could be either or. If it was me, I would probably record this in 12/8 just because it gives me a little bit more... I don't know. I think I don't like working with triplets as much as I like working with just regular eighth notes, so 12/8 kind of takes care of that for me. So just another comment there. And now to answer your question, DDA, yeah, you're all on triplets on the grid there, yeah. To answer your question, I think your melody is great. I really don't think you have any problem with your melody. I don't think the melody is suffering from being appealing or emotive. I think it is appealing. I think it is emotive. Me, personally, this is pure subjective taste. I think it's suffering from a little bit of clarity and punctuation. Your tone itself is really lovely, but I feel like I would rather hear your synth tone as a backup layer to something that's more direct and something that's more confrontational. It's hard for me to get the rhythm of like dum da na 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 da na na na. I'm also getting a Game of Thrones influence here. Do you get the Game of Thrones? right? That chord change and that melody has a little bit of Game of Thrones feeling from the beginning there, but it's not as direct because your synth patch takes a little while to grow. It takes a little while for it to get right on the beat. The attack is kind of slow. So imagine that you kept that melody the same, but imagine that you had something else that was layered on top of it that's like much more percussive, maybe much more, let's try something like, what if I did your part with like octave strum? And I don't know your part, so I'm going to kind of be stumbling through it. But what if I just did like... And that's like way more going to be, I'm going to have a strong attack, but then your part could kind of be in the background. You know what I mean? Let's listen. The idea? Okay, I'm getting lost with it, but do you hear? It's like I've got these dum, bum, bum, bum. Every bit of my melody is like sticking out to me. It's like prominent, and then I've got that really soft layer that you've created in the background. So I think your melody is great. I really do think it's great. I think it just needs a slightly different production decisions to make it stick out more. And I'm not saying drop the synth. I would just think about layering the synth back. This is personal taste. If you were looking to actually change the melody, what I would consider doing is including more rhythmic variety, faster notes, including some of those triplets. I'm not hearing any of the actual triplet. Da, 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 da. Including some scale runs adds a lot of interest. So I'm going to try to play a melody on top of this. It's going to be an improvised melody, so, wish me luck, but you'll get... So here I've got... Right? Da-da-da-dum, da-da-da-dum. So instead of, always having the slower notes, little groups of dum, do-do-do-do-do-do. So keep your long flowing melodies and find little spots where you can dum-dum-dum-dum, da-da-da-dum. Adds a lot of little interest in there. It's just embellishments, just little improvements to the architecture of your melody. And DDA, if you can't play it with that patch, yeah, exactly. So, and that's something where like an extra patch layer can give you the clarity, and then that background patch layer just gives you kind of the ambience. I think that works out really, really well. So, and yeah, I'm seeing back in the chat here, El Francis, which is Miguel. Good, excellent. Yeah, so I'm glad you're going to send me that email. We'll get you all taken care of for sure. And then it reminds you of the Doctor Who theme. Yeah, exactly. So I love it, DDA. Excellent work. I mean, I hope my suggestion helps, but I think it's really, really nice stuff, and I think you're killing it. I mean, I think that's exactly what, if I was hiring somebody to make music, and I'm really curious to know what kind of project it was, that sounds awesome. So really, 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 really nice work. And I can't even say that you need the improvement on there. I thought that worked really, really well. I was only giving you criticism on if it was my production, what would I do different? What part of that melody feels like it's hard to grasp onto? It's just too slippery. It's just a little too, rubbery and a little too glissando-y. So to have another layer that I can really securely held onto, but I can still keep all the glory and all the aesthetic of that stuff in that liquid background. I think that's a nice kind of combination there. So yeah, great work. Absolute great work. So last question here is from Nick White. Nick White says, I just found a course for music production, marketing, and business. It's a 6-month course designed to help people who are already making music and turn them into professionals. What's your opinion on a course like this as opposed to a degree like Berkeley, NYU, or Full Sail? So Nick, first off, we got to meet up soon. I thought I sent you an email not too long ago. If you didn't have time to get back, don't worry about it. There's no rush. If I didn't get back to you, please let me know. I thought that, You guys know me. I'm not very organized with this stuff. But I'm definitely, I thought that we were supposed to try to meet up here soon. I would love to get more into your stuff because I see what you're working on. And what I'd like to say is that with what you're doing already, Nick, I don't think you need to go to school for production, and I don't think you need to go to school for music. I think what you're doing is as good as you can possibly do. Make music and continue to make music. But there are certain things that, like, you know, that you could, that Full Sail or Berklee or NYU are really going to get you, that you're not going to get on your own. And that is networking. It's other people. It's other people that are doing the same thing as you. It's other people that know people. It's other people with uncles that have recording studios. It's other people that can play instruments that you can't play. And that is the number one thing you're going to get, okay? You're not going to learn how to make better music by going to Berklee. I believe that. I really do believe, and you know, I know this is blasphemy for a lot of people, but you're going to learn to make good music by making music. The people that make the best music are the people that wrote the most music, not the people that studied the most, not the people that got the best grades. It's the people that have the most experience. This happens time and time and time again. I know people with zero knowledge of music theory, and they make great songs because they've written lots of songs. And I know people that have just graduated with their master's degree in music theory, and they write garbage music that no one wants to hear because they have no experience writing music. So these are different skills. And Nick, if you're making music, you're on the right path. The other things are really important. You mentioned marketing and business. Well, I do think that you'll figure out marketing on your own and business on your own once you have something going on and you're like failing and succeeding and you're having clients. But this is where it goes back to the value of a degree isn't what you learn. It's who you meet. It's not what you know, it's who you know. And that is what you're spending money on at Berklee and NYU. If you look at what people do once they graduate from Berklee, many of them go into graphic design. Many of them go into, non-musical careers. And many of them aren't making that much money. You would get much more money if you graduated with a computer science degree or almost any degree. And these are all accessible. Go to payscale.com. There's another one, I think it's like zippia.com. And look up Berklee and look up what these students are making after they graduate. What kind of sectors do they go into after they graduate? And then ask yourself, is this worth it? Is it worth it to spend, $48,000 to meet all these people? Or can I develop that network on my own? Can I go to every single local show, every single music shop? Can I start hosting free clinics and start meeting people? Can I start producing people for free? I mean, almost everything. The vast majority of the music I've produced has been like discount rate because it has always been fun for me. And thank God I did that because I met so many people doing it and it opened up the doors and I got the experience on it. So, I guess to answer your question, Nick, the big thing you're going to get out of those courses that you're not going to get on an online thing is the networking. So it's kind of hard for me to recommend an online music production, marketing, and business course just because you're not getting the main benefit of going to school, which is connection. I will put my reputation on it. The number one benefit to going to school for music is the people you meet. And you're not going to meet those people in person like you will in an online course. Now, there might be really good information on there on marketing and business. I'm not a marketing person. I'm not a business person. I will tell you my entire marketing strategy. When I started my YouTube channel, I said, I'm going to make free things. I'm going to make a lot of stuff for free. And that way people know I'm not after their wallet. And I'll try to do things that that are correct. Like I'll try to make it so I know what I'm talking about. And that way, maybe one day I'll come out with a product and I'll have a reputation and people will say, well, he's not trying to steal my money and he knows what he's talking about. That was my marketing plan. Now, I didn't need to go to school for that marketing plan. I didn't need a degree for that. When I talked to actual marketing people, like when I first started to build a website, I came across the sleaziest people that saw what I was doing on YouTube when I had like 100,000 subscribers. And they said, oh, we're going to start you a fan club and we're going to do manufactured scarcity. And we're going to make it look like it's this private club. And then psychologically, you know what it does? It makes people want to sign up. And then you say there's only 12 hours. And these people wanted me, and it's marketing. That's what you learn in marketing, is how to manipulate people's, how to exploit people, how to lie to people to make more money. And I just had no interest in that. So it's profitable. It works a lot of money. It makes a lot of money, but it betrays everything that I want to do, as a musician. So I just decided, that's my marketing strategy. And pretty much everybody I know that has an honest marketing strategy, it seems to work out. So there's a lot of insight in there that isn't exploitative. There's a lot of insight on like, what kind of thumbnails look good, what kind of, graphic design. I think graphic design is part of marketing, and I don't think there's anything wrong with getting good graphic design. The business side of things, I don't know who you can trust for the business side of things, because the business side of things is changing every month, for crying out loud. The music business today is completely different than it was 1 year ago, just because since COVID hit. So I'm reluctant to recommend a course on those things, especially for music production, because Nick, I do think you're on the right path. And I think as long as you keep making music like you're doing, if you just can keep doing that, then you're going to be making better music. Like, I really do think that's the secret. The other ones, I can't provide you a confident answer on. I can only say that I would confidently state the number one thing you can get out of any sort of music payment structure is the connections. I do think that's the number one thing you're going to get, is the networking. So if there's no networking that you're going to get there, if you're not going to actually meet a lot of great musicians and be able to work with them side by side, I would question the value of it. However, if you've got the money and the time to invest in it, I always say go for it. If you've got the money, if you've got the time, if you've got the motivation, just do it. Just do it, and then find out if it was a mistake or not. Like, what's the worst that can happen? There's really no big downside. You lost a little time, but you'll probably learn something. So I don't want to discourage you from doing it if you're actually excited about it. Now, as far as Full Sail is concerned, I know nothing about Full Sail. I've heard good things, I've heard bad things. Not gonna go out on a limb and say one or the other. All right. So that pretty much takes care of it. DDA saying graduated December 2010, still paying for it. Yeah, so it looks like you guys are talking about some music education things in there. So, all right, I'm going to try to catch up on the comments here. And if you do have any questions, please ask them now. And in the meantime, as I'm catching up, we'll go back to some of Moogly's tunes. So, it looks like DDA has some great experience here, and Nick, if you are hopefully you can check the chat out here, because DDA actually, that's Key of D Music. Maybe you can contact him on Discord or through Patreon. He's got some great insight into being at Full Sail and how it changed his career as well, but how expensive it was as well. So it sounds like you could get quite a bit of insight from that, and I appreciate you commenting in there, D. All right, so one of the questions here in the chat is from Ronnie Whelan, saying, I'm having problems transitioning smoothly from strumming to finger picking. Do you have any tips? So, Ronnie, I do have a little video on finger picking on my channel. It's Harness the Power of Dust in the Wind. If you haven't watched that one already, I think it's a great place to start for finger picking. For finger picking in general, I think the hardest thing is to get a consistent, smooth tone if you're a beginner. So practice on an acoustic guitar, not an electric, and experiment with growing out your fingernails. I know it's weird, but I've had fingernails on my hands since I was like a junior in high school. They're not like insanely long, all right? They're just long enough where I can still get a hold of my bass notes. Not a good example right here. Just long enough where I can still get a hold of my bass notes and, actually get some tone out of it. But, getting enough volume out is pretty hard. I guess my advice to transition from strumming to finger picking, start with very simple patterns, Ronnie. Start with extremely simple patterns. Here's just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Just simple patterns. And then adding in patterns that have two notes at the same time. Also, as a beginner, I would highly suggest that you try to get yourself, be very strict with how you fingerpick. Come up with a system and don't break it. The system I always teach people is keep these 3 fingers on the first 3 strings. So I'm playing the 3rd string and the 2nd string and the 1st string, all right? So 1st string with the ring finger, middle finger plays the 2nd string, and then the 1st finger plays the 3rd string. Like that. Those fingers never change. They'll stay there forever. If I have to hit the 4th string, I'll do it with my thumb. If I have to hit the 5th string, I'll do it with my thumb. If I have to hit the 6th string, I'll do it with my thumb. This is like one of those general rules I try to teach beginner players at. And then, of course, you have to break it sometimes, but for the most part, try to keep things very strict so you're programming in good rules with your fingers. Then later on, you learn new patterns and your thumb kind of knows where to go already. So... Ronnie, you're talking about transitioning from one to the other in a song, from transitioning chords. Well, Ronnie, I would think it sounds like that shouldn't change. I mean, I'm a little confused, Ronnie, because your left hand's doing the same thing whether you're strumming or finger picking. You know what I mean? Finger picking chords sometimes are more difficult. Sometimes you might have some harder chords to finger pick, but I can't see why it would change just because you're finger picking it versus strumming. Sometimes when you're finger picking, you realize, oh wow, not every note was ringing out. You might play a C a lot of times, and you might have a note that's not ringing out, but you didn't realize it. And then all of a sudden you finger pick it, and you realize, oh, that note wasn't even ringing out. So that's just one of those things that becomes aware to you when you start finger picking. That might be what's going on there, but I'm not sure. Oh, yes, Ron. So you were talking about the anthemic chorus thing. I wanted to prepare something for you, Ron. I wanted to prepare a good example of a rock track here for you. But let's briefly, what I would think about with the big anthemic rock track is I think about one, double tracked guitars. We just talked about it on my YouTube channel. But everything being in sync between the kick drum and the guitars and the bass. So imagine like I'm in E, all right, and I want some big E minor chorus, all right? This is just a giant bed. I'm not doing like notes. I'm not showing off. It's just noise, like oceans and waves of power chords coming for you. E, C over G, A. That is to me when I think of big anthemic choruses where the whole crowd is singing and waving their arms and you've got these huge melodies and everything is so, and the singer knows of the strength of those chords, those harmonies and stuff like that. And if you listen to like the bass guitar, boom, 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 matching that rhythm with your guitars, dum, 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 and the kick drum, boom. Da, boom, boom, da, boom. It's just huge walls of power chords. Everything is synced up. The bass drum isn't like playing off with the kick drum. They're all kind of synced together, and it's a big bed. It's this giant water bed, and on top of that, all the vocals just shine. That's how I think of it. I was going to prepare something for one of the future streams because I wanted it to sound good and look good, but I'll still do it, Ron, in one of these videos. I'll still do something like that for you. That's my quick answer there for you, though. Repetition legitimizes. I keep seeing that phrase. It's almost like the more I hear that phrase, the more sense it makes and the more I agree with it. There should be a phrase that sums that up. I told Mike Moog that his music sounds like older Astral Projection. He is actually the one that introduced me to Astral Projection. So we used to listen to that stuff a long time ago. Very, very, very glad I found out about that stuff too. It took me a long time to embrace electronic music, and once I did, I realized how much I was missing out on by not embracing it. I had that, I was a prog rock kid. I grew up in Dream Theater, so like I literally thought that computerized music was like cheating. I thought it was just pushing buttons. And then I remembered, like, it took me a long time to realize playing piano is just pushing buttons. So, like, you're going to tell me that's not music either? Yeah, Ronnie, sorry about that. If you have more, like, a specific thing, like give me a specific finger picking pattern you're having problem with, specific chord change, I'd be happy to give you some advice on that one, and then I can try to answer it more confidently. Jared's commenting on the double tracking video. So yeah, I can't believe, just so you know, I mean this 100% honestly, I'm really familiar with the beginner's mind of a musician because I've worked with beginner musicians for so long, and I'm constantly reminded of what a beginner's mindset is. I'm not familiar with a beginner's mindset of production because I don't do that stuff a lot. I mean, I learned it on my own, and then I kind of forgot, and I never taught, so I'm not constantly reminded. So I was truly astonished at how much confusion there is on the double tracking principle. And I'm just going to also rant right now. There's this really strange, I'm like really disappointed with some of this myth. I mean, it's a very small percentage of commenters, but there's this really strange myth that playing to a click track is somehow new and that it somehow sucks the life out of rock and roll. And I feel like I need to make a video on it because, like, click tracks are not new. Click tracks have been existed since the microphone and the metronome were ever introduced to each other, like literally since the 40s, 30s, when you would literally record a metronome and then put that headphone on somebody. That's a click track. So I think people might just be confused because they might be thinking quantization, where you take an actual performance and you just mash it onto the grid, which is the stupidest thing I've ever heard. I don't know a single producer that would do that for any legitimate reason. Like, oh, let's take a good performance and quantize it for no reason. I don't know anybody that would do that. And there's a lot of confusion out there, everybody. That's all I'm saying. I've, like, the music theory questions, like, I'm just kind of shocked at how much confusion is out there on production and how, I'm very confused, very, very shocked. You know, I make videos that are very anodyne, very unoffensive, and all of a sudden I make a video on, like, being prepared for the studio, and I'm getting comments like, click tracks. Oh, this is, not true. This is like how you suck the life out of music. This is what ruined rock and roll music. And it's like, okay, I don't know where you guys are getting your information from, but it's just wrong. It's just wrong to say that click tracks are new, and then to blame the death of rock and roll music on that, I find very, very, very curious, and I need to figure out more of what's going on there. So, Jared, yeah, if people are complaining about quantizing a track, I completely understand, but I don't know where that's happening. I've never seen somebody take a good drummer and quantize them on for no reason. Like, when I work with Jeff Beardstank, he plays great tracks, and I'll take there will be maybe one hit, 2 hits where I move them out. But, like, to quantize his whole track would literally ruin it. And I think any producer would know that. Like, I don't know where this myth is coming from. I've worked with plenty of people and people that produce. I don't know anybody that does that says, oh, that's like saying I'm going to take your entire track and then auto-tune it to the grid for no reason. Like, that doesn't happen. It's like we're complaining about a boogeyman that doesn't exist. This isn't a thing. Like, yeah, pop music, everything's quantized. Everything's, a lot of things are on the grid. That's pop music. Like, that's a different style. So, Rick Beato says how drum performance are often fixed in post, remaining all trace of humanity. If that happens, I don't know where that's happening, and I still see here plenty of humanity. I listened to I had to teach a Harry Styles song, 2 years ago, and I heard mistakes in the drum part, and I loved them. Like, this is pop. This is pop rock. So I don't know, like. The click has always been recorded. The Police used a click track. The Beatles used a click track sometimes. Genesis used a click track a lot. Rush, all right? Rush used a click track. Like, I don't think that these things are lifeless. I think if you quantized everybody, yeah, I think it would become lifeless really quick. And it would sound terrible because there would be all these artifacts in there. So it's strange how adamant people are being about it. So. Ronnie's saying, it's my right hand going from strumming to the rigid hand position for picking without going out of time. So if you're going from strumming to hand positioning, that's going to be hard. I mean, yeah, if you're going from like, if you're doing like one of these things. Yeah, Ronnie, that's just going to be practice, man. If it's something like that, that's hard. That's hard for me too. It really is. Phone account saying I blame Beato for this a bit. He complains about on the grid. I can understand about complaining about overproducing something for sure. I just don't understand where the specific idea that a click track is not rock and roll It's just not true. I'm sorry. Like, it's just a fact that a lot of rock music was recorded to a click track. And yeah, it's a fact that most of it wasn't quantized. I can't see a reason to quantize a track that doesn't need quantizing. There would be no reason to do that. And I know that because I used to try. I used to record Jeff and me, and then I tried quantizing the drums, and I realized this sounds terrible. What we're better off doing is getting good. That's much better option, is learn to play good, and then you can record your part and not need quantization. Like, that's what real drummers do. You know, if I think back to the one good authority I have on this, my dad, who used to be a Motown engineer, the one thing he always said is, like, the hardest thing you can do is find a drummer that plays on time. That's the secret. You know, they don't need to be flashy. I mean, this guy recorded a lot of music. This was his job. And that's what he said the number one most important thing was in a drummer. Not if they could groove, not if they could, you know, play the bossa nova, not if they could do a gravity blast, if they could keep the beat, you know. And that's, you know, back from the Motown era of, yeah, there's still metronomes sometimes used, but they certainly weren't doing digital recording. And guess what? In analog music, you still have to edit, you know, and you would cut tape. If you listen to the song Cruisin' by Smokey Robinson, that's one of the songs my dad actually recorded and engineered. And it's spliced. There's tape splice from different performances on different days. You know, that's editing. You know, people right now in the comments apparently would think that, oh, it's blasphemy, you're not allowed to. It has to be all live, all at once. No, editing and tape, like, it's just easier now when it's on digital. So I don't know. It's just a crazy argument. I wouldn't recommend any of you subscribe to it. You know, rock can be recorded a lot of ways. The way you suck the life out of rock and roll music is by writing it a poor song, playing a poor song. Like, it doesn't come from the technology. The technology doesn't suck the life out of, you know, a bad song, a bad producer, bad musicians. That all sucks the life out of a song. So I think On the Grid is simply one of these concepts that are easy enough to understand for the uninitiated to get angry about. Yeah, Ron, I think that makes sense. It's like auto-tune, too. I think it's just a lot of purity. I think people want things to be pure. They want it to just be like, oh, you know, there's anti-tech, but I just can't buy the anti-technology thing. You know, I just can't. Technology has assisted musicians all the way since the beginning of, you know, we used to use gut string guitars, and then we used technology to have steel, and it made it easier. And, you know, I mean, God, how long do you have to go? Tape, you still want to be cutting tape? You know, how about tape itself? That was a technology. It used to be wax cylinders. If you really want to be analog, why don't you record on a wax cylinder? Okay. Or, you know, before that, it was music boxes. It was all like, you know, cylinders with wheels. So if you're really hardcore about your music, you should be recording on a wax cylinder. And then, like, you know, or how about the bass guitar? The bass guitar is supposed to be played with your fingers. No, it's not. It's supposed to be played with a bow. All right, that's what it is. Like, so I never buy the anti-technology argument. It can be used for good. It can be used for evil. Don't, you know, don't take it too far either way. Kelly Householder, sorry to ask again, Jake, but how do you lay down multiple layers, multiple guitar solos that are third or fifth octave of, that are like a third or fifth or octave of all of them? How do you know where to play the harmonies? Kelly, I didn't, you're saying ask again. I'm trying to think about where you asked the first time. I didn't see this question a first time. If it was in Patreon, I missed it. Let me think about this. How do you lay down multiple guitar solos that are all like third or fifth or octave? So you're asking, how do you lay down a harmonized guitar solo? Production-wise, what I usually do is I split them up. If you're talking about how do I, like, produce it, a lot of times I'll put, like, if my main track is here, and if I'm recording a major third or just like thirds, a parallel third, I'll put that, like, you know, 70% one way, 70% the other way, and that way you can kind of hear my harmony tracks. If I'm doing a 4-part harmony, I'll try to create more space, you know, so you can kind of hear each harmony track. I don't want them all summed to mono for something like a harmonized lead guitar. I don't want them all in the center. If you're talking about how to write them, that's a big topic, Kelly. You know, I am going to do a thing on harmonized leads here before. I think I do get into it a little bit on my video on Mega. It's a mega lesson on Mixolydian and, harmonized or triplets, legato triplets. It's my video on legato triplets. And I do talk about harmonizing with thirds and how easy it is on your guitar if you know your 3 notes per string shapes. So that should kind of help out. So how do you know where to play another solo over another one, meaning what notes are you playing? It's going to be about harmony, Kelly. I mean, what you're talking about is harmony. You're talking about every time a harmony is happening, it's some sort of a chord. You know, a harmony is, if you know your triads, and if you know your extended chords, you're going to basically know most of your harmonies. If you look at any time, like there's 4 guitars playing, add up all 4 notes. You'll notice they're probably playing the 4 notes of a chord. And now you have to ask yourself, why is this chord appearing in this fashion. Well, that's what happens naturally when you take a note and then you skip over a third and you skip over another third and you skip over another third. You end up with a full chord. So what you're going to have to really know is like, think of harmonies as really fast chord changes, extraordinarily fast chord changes, going by faster than you can possibly imagine it. So if you can't write really complex chord changes, it's going to be very hard to write complex harmonies. Slowing down a harmonized lead will give you a very complex chord progression. You know what I mean? You'll have a chord progression with it. So I think the secret here is you're going to have to be able to harmonize just simple thirds over a chord progression. And then, I haven't done a video on this, so it's kind of hard for me to talk about. And also, this is one of those things there's entire systems in place for. Formal harmony is that's what you go to college for. If you want to get a music degree, that's what you're going to learn. You're going to learn the system, the rules of harmony, better than I know them. But I don't know the rules of harmony. I know my rules of harmony. And it's just a conglomeration of everything that I've heard before. So fortunately, Kelly, you can look this up. I mean, if you look up common practice harmony, you're going to get a long distance into understanding, thirds and fifths and stuff like that, how to harmonize a bass line. And then from there, the sky is the limit. And there's very, very thorough courses on that completely for free online. So I do recommend that you give it a try. But it's a very complicated topic. I would say start easy. Don't worry about 4-part harmonies. Just write a 2-part harmony. Then write a 3-part harmony. And then once you're writing 3-part harmonies, try to understand how they relate to your major triads, your minor triads, your diatonic extended chords, major sevenths, minor sevenths, half diminished, stuff like that. So, sorry, it's not a very clear answer, Kelly. I do apologize. It's a very, very complex topic, and I could go all day on it. It's something I will have to make a video on, so... Jared saying, to make a studio album, you do punch-ins and pick the best take. You craft a beautiful piece of music. It isn't meant to be played all live unless that's the intent you're going for. Absolutely. There are times I record pure live. If I have a jazz combo, like I'll record a jazz combo just 100% live. You go in, do the take, try again until you get the take you love. That's the one we do. I'm not going to be punching in for a jazz combo. They're improvising every time. They don't want to play to a click. That's not my interest. That's like not the right thing to do. It's going to suffer if I try to punch in on a jazz take. But yeah, like you're trying to make a studio production, which is different than a live production, completely different things. Stairway to Heaven is a studio production. Bohemian Rhapsody is a studio production. These are things that required lots of precision. Whether they recorded to clicks or not, it took lots of like preparation and planning. And for some reason, people want to forget that that's a thing. So, all right. Glad I'm glad that helped. All right, folks. So what we are going to do is try to wrap this up. I definitely need to wrap things up before 2. So unless you have any other immediate questions, we will, we'll call it a day. Thank you so much for joining. Thank you so much for your questions. I always appreciate it. I do believe I'm going to start doing these live streams every single week. My friend Beardstank will be back in town soon, so I'm very excited about some of the projects we'll be working on. I think I'm going to have Beardstank edit some of these live streams into videos that I can just post on YouTube. I don't like the idea of doing these live for everybody. I mean, I'm fine with the audience size of it. I realize it's not even that much of a stress for me to have a bunch of weirdos in here that I don't know watching. But it's really, I like it being personal like this. Like I know pretty much everybody in the chat at this point. If I open this up to the public, that's going to change really, really fast. And that's how parasocial relationships begin. I have to pretend to like everyone and know everybody and remind, I remember all these familiar faces when I don't. And if you don't know about parasocial relationships, I encourage you all to watch another Tom Scott video on the... It's a long video, but I highly suggest that you watch it. It's called There Is No Algorithm for Truth by the Royal Institution, Tom Scott. And this is something I watched. It was kind of on, misinformation and that sort of thing. But there was a very, very, very important aspect in here on parasocial relationships. I didn't know what that term meant. And now that I do know what that term means, it's very, very applicable to what I do because it's something I've been trying to avoid since day one. I've tried to avoid making it look like I'm all of your friend, right? I mean, let's face it, I don't know you. I've never hung out with most of you. It doesn't mean I don't want to. It just means that that's the nature of this relationship, is that I can't know every single one of you. I can't know your intimate history. I certainly want to assist as much as I can, but we only have our limitations. And for me to pretend friend, like, you know, every single person that comments on me is on my video is a friend. That would be dishonest. That's just dishonest. At this point, I do know some of you. You know what I mean? I am familiar with, because we've developed that relationship. But if I open up a chat with 1,000 people watching my live streams, do you know how quickly that just becomes artificial? Hey, welcome to the stream. Garbage Man 5425. Good to see you again. Like, I've never seen this guy before, and it's very easy to want to create that environment because it's friendly, but it's still not honest. And right now, I still feel pretty honest with you all. I don't feel like I have to fake anything around you all, and I would certainly like to keep it that way. So that's the plan. Is we're going to have Jeff maybe do some editing on these videos, and that way we can post them live or post them afterward in a little chopped up fashion, and that way some other people can benefit from them. So anyways, it doesn't look like we have any other questions other than Okan is complaining. You mean it could tell me Bohemian Rhapsody isn't a one-take wonder? Yeah, they just went in and improvised that song. You know, that's how rock gets recorded. You just go in and feel it. You don't have to write your harmonies or anything like that. No, just make it up, you know. It's not like Freddie Mercury worked on that for years on the piano before, you know. I think it would be very, very hard to maintain a personal feel when you have hundreds or thousands of people in the chat. Yeah, Jared, I mean, I don't want to get into that stuff. I mean, I'd be happy to perform for 1,000 people, but I mean, I do enjoy this. I legitimately do enjoy this. It's nice to be able to get to know some of you and to, actually, and it's just not going to work that way if this gets too big. You know, it simply would not work that way if this gets too big. And it's enjoyable to me. So, yeah. Garbage Man 420, welcome back. All right, folks. Well, once again, thank you so much. I appreciate it. We will do this sometime soon. I will plan on next Monday, but you know me and schedules. You know, I will. I'll make stuff one day, and hopefully that schedule is works out for you all. But you know, appreciate you being here. Appreciate you for signing up, and hopefully spring is warming up for you wherever you're at. See you in the future. All right. Adios. Namaste. Blessings and infinite wisdom.